Keir Starmer, any moment now, is going to start announcing measures which he says will help control the number of immigrants coming into the country to live and to work.
So we're going to go through that door and into the press conference where, there we go, there's the podium, and we're expecting the Prime Minister to arrive in the next couple of minutes. Of course, here in the studio, we're joined by GB News presenter and the Mail's Andrew Pearson, by the Mirror's Kevin Maguire. The slogan, let's keep that podium in shot, and the slogan, securing Britain's future. Andrew, you've just said, what does that mean?
What does it mean? What is it?
Well, it's a nice catch-all, isn't it? I mean, we all want to secure Britain's future, and here is the Prime Minister.
He's about to secure our future. I'm so happy.
Today we publish a white paper on immigration, a strategy absolutely central to my plan for change that will finally take back control of our borders and close the book on a squalid chapter for our politics, our economy and our country. Take back control. Everyone knows that slogan, and everyone knows what it meant on immigration, or at least that's what people thought. Because what followed from the previous government, starting with the people who used that slogan, was the complete opposite. Between 2019 and 2023, even as they were going round our country, telling people with a straight face that they would get immigration down, net migration quadrupled until in 2023, it reached nearly 1 million. That's about the population of Birmingham, our second largest city. That's not control, it's chaos. And look, they must answer for themselves. But I don't think that you can do something like that by accident. It was a choice made even as they told the country they were doing the opposite. A one-nation experiment in open borders, conducted on a country that voted for control. Well, no more. Today, this Labour government is shutting down the lab. The experiment is over. We will deliver what you've asked for time and again, and we will take back control of our borders. And let me tell you why. Because I know, on a day like today, people who like politics will try to make this all about politics, about this or that strategy, targeting these voters, responding to that party. No. I'm doing this because it is right, because it is fair, and because it is what I believe in. Let me put it this way. Nations depend on rules, fair rules. Sometimes they're written down, often they're not. But either way, they give shape to our values, guide us towards our rights, of course, but also our responsibilities, the obligations we owe to each other. Now, in a diverse nation like ours, and I celebrate that, these rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower-paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart. So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly. That's why some of the policies in this white paper go back nearly 3 years. why I told the Labour Party conference taking back control is a Labour argument, and why, most importantly of all, inward migration is already falling with this government. It's about fairness. And look, I mean, migration is part of Britain's national story. We talked last week about the great rebuilding of this country after the war. Migrants were part of that, and they make a massive contribution today. And you will never hear me denigrate that. But when people come to our country, they should also commit to integration, to learning our language. And our system should actively distinguish between those that do and those that don't. I think that's fair. Equally, Britain must compete for the best talent in the world, in science, in technology, in healthcare. You can't simply pull up a drawbridge, let nobody in, and think that's an economy that would work. That would hurt the pay packets of working people without question. But at the same time, we do have to ask why parts of our economy seem almost addicted to importing cheap labour, rather than investing in the skills of people who are here and want a good job in their community. Sectors like engineering, where visas have rocketed while apprenticeships have plummeted. Is that fair to Britain? Is that fair to young people, weighing up their future to miss out on those apprentices? To see colleges in their community almost entirely dedicated to one-year courses for overseas students? No, I don't think that it is. And truth be told, I don't think anybody does. Yet that is the Britain this broken system has created. So as this white paper sets out, every area of the immigration system, work, family and study, will be tightened up so we have more control. Skill requirements raised to degree level. English language requirements across all routes, including for dependents. The time it takes to acquire settled status extended from 5 years to 10. And enforcement tougher than ever, because fair rules must be followed. Now, make no mistake, this plan means migration will fall. That's a promise. But I want to be very clear on this. If we do need to take further steps, if we do need to do more to release pressure on housing and our public services, then mark my words, we will. But it's not just about numbers, because the chaos of the previous government also changed the nature of immigration in this country. Fewer people who make a strong economic contribution, more who work in parts of our economy that put downward pressure on wages. So perhaps the biggest shift in this white paper is that we will finally honour what take back control meant and begin to choose who comes here so that migration works for our national interest. You know, this is where the whole debate is skewed, as if some people think controlling immigration is reining in a sort of natural freedom, rather than the basic and reasonable responsibility of government to make choices that work for a nation's economy. And for years, this seems to have muddled our thinking. But let me be clear, it ends now. We will create a migration system that is controlled, selective and fair. A clean break with the past that links access to visas directly to investment in homegrown skills, so that if a business wants to bring people in from abroad, they must first invest in Britain. But also, so settlement becomes a privilege that is earned, not a right. Easier if you make a contribution, if you work, pay in, and help rebuild our country. Now, some people may even be against that. But I think for the vast majority of people in this country, that is what they have long wanted to see. An immigration system that is fair, that works for our national interest, and that restores common sense and control to our borders. That is what this white paper will deliver. Lower net migration, higher skills, backing British workers. The start of repairing our social contract, which the chaos and cynicism of the last government did so much to undermine. Thank you.
The Prime Minister has just spoken of the need for integration and the need that people coming here to learn our language. He's said that this country was in danger of becoming addicted to importing cheap labour. And he said that the rules on work, family and study should be tightened when it came to immigration. It was all rather reform, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The first 5 minutes of that 10-minute address, I thought, could have been delivered by a reform Prime Minister. Take back control, this huge surge in immigration. It was a choice by governments to have open borders and time for change.
If reform hadn't done so well in those local elections and won that by-election, I'm not sure we'd be having this speech at all.
Well, he's taken the wrong lesson, because Labour was punching its own voters in the face with things like taking away winter fuel. That's what was driving the surge in reform. It wasn't just migration. But when he spoke about his missions and milestones in the past, controlling migration wasn't it there. So he has flipped. He should be honest about that and say, I've changed. But I think it's really dangerous to do it. Now, of course, to talk about open borders, we've never had open borders for 150 years. Look, net migration did go over 900,000 in Boris Johnson's period. Part of that was fueled by taking people from Ukraine, which is a kind of one-off, a couple 100,000 people. Many people threw open their homes to them. So it's going to come down anyway. We've got an ageing population. We require migration. We're going to see what's going to happen in the care sector, other parts of the economy. And look, I'm all for training. I have a work ethic. I think everybody should work if you can. But just to say the problem is migration, that's what's wrong with British economy. It's completely wrong.
Millions aren't working, and there are so many people on benefits who, frankly, could be working, but the benefit system is still too attractive for some. So they prefer to...
There's not millions.
What's your paper, Andrew, the Daily Mail? They'll be sitting down, drafting their editorial for tomorrow's edition. What are they going to say about it?
Well, nice try, Prime Minister. We'd also quite like to know how high does he think immigration should be? There's no figure, there's no number. He said it's too high. How high is too high?
You decided you were going to dismiss it before you said a word.
Well, I knew he wouldn't give us a figure.
I accept.
And I'm right,
you have to have a controlled system. We have a controlled system.
Yeah.
The numbers couldn't continue where they were, but it's more than about numbers. He added a little rider, a couple of sentences later on, because he just doesn't want to play a game and appear to be some big bigot. But he's not confronting a lot of the myths about migration. People who come to work, the Home Office makes billions of pounds because they've got to pay for visas. They've got to pay a National Health Service surcharge to use the NHS. It's not all free. They come here and they contribute to the economy.
What I think was extraordinary about a Labour Prime Minister's speech of 10 minutes was, as I say, for the first 5 minutes, it felt like it could have been a reform speech, cracking down hard on immigration. Then he said, you know, we need to talk about the value of migrants to
That was
health
for me.
and social care. That was 5 minutes into the speech. I mean, it was very broad brush negative to start with. And I'm surprised, I'm amazed he didn't stand up and begin with saying, firstly, can I say how much we've valued the contribution of migrants to this country, and we wouldn't have been able to grow without them. And to leave that until later in the speech, I just wonder what that says to people who have come.
It says he's terrified that the way they're going on, they're going to lose the next general election. Labour MPs have been saying that. They're getting it in their mailbags. Remember, Reform was second in 90 seats where Labour MPs, some of them with very small majorities. Farage said at the election, I'm coming after Labour. He is. That's what this speech is about.
to sort the economy so living standards rise, and you've got to stop taking money away from people, things like the winter fuel allowance, or kicking crutches away from people taking away their personal independence payments. You've got to sort out public services, health and education. And yes, you have to tackle the migration question because it is one of the three big issues. But the way he's just focusing on that, I think, is entirely negative. And he's going to begin to legitimise the reform position, not undermine it. He's going to legitimise it, because it's almost like having a Nigel Farage tribute act in Downing Street for that first 5 minutes.
And what do we make of the theatre involved there? As we were saying earlier, that was a live transmission from Number 10 at 8:30 to catch the morning round, to catch all the radio programmes, programmes like this. It was absolutely playing to the mainstream media. Why would he choose to do that today?
It start the week, sets the agenda for the week, and he knows that people watching this programme are deeply concerned about immigration. Right. Well, Kevin says it's not a big factor. It's a huge factor. It is a huge factor. People's communities are changing beyond recognition, and they're very uncomfortable about it, and they don't like it. And they blame the last lot, and they blame this lot too.
And they also improve for the better. I think he knows the week will go on. Donald Trump will begin to dominate, tariffs, China. Also, war in Ukraine with Putin and Zelensky meeting in Turkey on Thursday. So you get it. You start the week with this issue. Yeah. If I was in Number 10 and doing the comms, I would say do this more often, because you speak to much bigger audiences, breakfast TV, than if you do it in the middle of the day when it's only people like me who are obsessed with politics.
It's a very Trumpian way to go about things, isn't it?
But you can learn the communications at times. It's the content and the tone.
Yeah.
I would like to be different.
It would have helped when he was delivering that speech if he felt like he'd read it a few times, because where was the passion? And it just felt like he'd just been the speech had been thrust in his hand just before he walked on the set.
He made an interesting point about cap on migrant numbers. Now, when we interviewed the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, a couple of weeks ago, just before the local elections, she refused to say that she would put a specific number on
working on it,
migrants. She's working on it. It's one of her plans. Let's hear what the Prime Minister said about that.
I don't think it's sensible to put a hard-edged cap on it. That has been done in one form or another for the best part of 10 years by different Prime Ministers. The only thing that links those Prime Ministers and the various caps or quotas or limits they put in place is every single one of them failed. And therefore, going down the failed route is not a sensible way for me. As with everything that I do, serious, pragmatic, looking at the things that will actually make a material difference. Thank you, Chris. Jerry.
That's a very odd logic, isn't it? To say basically that previous Prime Ministers and administrations have failed to meet the caps that they set themselves, so that's a policy for failure. No, it's a measure of failure, not a policy for failure. Not to have a cap.
But you make a rod for your own back. If you just say, for the sake of argument, you say it's 100,000. You miss it, you've then failed. But does it really matter?
You just guaranteed results.
If it's 101,000, and it's illogical, because can you imagine? Just say there's a world's class surgeon would like to come and work for the NHS. You need him, but say, "Oh, sorry, we're full up. We've hit the quota." It'd be nonsensical. It'll vary from year to year.
People won't take it seriously. He's a North London Liberal lawyer. He doesn't believe in any of this.
But the numbers will come down. They're coming
down because of what the last Tory government did.
Did you hear anything about the illegal migration?
No, wasn't mentioned at all in the speech.
Or asylum seekers or the Channel crossings?
And the small boats, I'm afraid, is totemic for what's wrong with the immigration system. The numbers have soared under this lot. They were going to sort out the gangs. No mention of it whatsoever.
What he's avoiding doing is conflating irregular migration.
No, illegal.
With legal.
No, it's illegal,
migration,
not irregular.
And also,
yes, people see it, as we were saying earlier, people see it as a symbol.
But of course that's why. But you have to explain why.
Notice Kevin's using the Downing Street line irregular. No, it's illegal.
And of course, I think Downing Street call it illegal.
No, they don't call it irregular.
And of course, what you had when his lot were in and net migration went over 900,000, they wanted to use boats to distract. It's far fewer people. It was about 30, 40,000 as against 900,000. They wanted to distract by focusing on the boats, and then they would just shout Rwanda. At least he's free of that stunt.
When do we think we might see any of this being put into practice?
Well, you've got to get on with it. They've got a huge majority. It's a white paper published today. Yeah. Huge majority.
A white paper sets out what the government's going to do. Then you've got to legislate for it. I would have thought it'd take 2 or 3 years, I would have thought.
Andrew,
3 years.
Kevin,